in the context of thousands of people being killed, of 1.9 million people being displaced, of 100 journalists being killed, of all these numbers, you know, it's an absurd thing that what, an actor sticking up his hands with some writing on it is brave? That says a lot about our world.
British-Egyptian actor Khalid Abdalla. Most recently, you've seen him in the Netflix hit series The Crown, where he played Dodi al-Fayed, the Egyptian film producer romantically involved with Princess Diana before the pair died in a car crash in 1997. The role earned him a Best Supporting Actor in a Drama nomination at the Critics' Choice Awards. But he's also made headlines for calling for a ceasefire in Gaza at different red carpet events, a gesture that has gone viral on social media. In our chat with Khalid, we talk about how he tackles identity in his art, the importance of playing Dodi, and why he will continue speaking out about causes that matter to him.
Khalid Abdalla, welcome to Real Talk.
Nice to be here.
It's a real pleasure to have you on. You know, one question I want to ask is, after the massive success that we've seen for The Crown, right? How are you taking it all in? Is it a continuation of Khalid Abdalla's career? Is it a reintroduction? Is it a rebirth? How do you look at it?
It's still early. I guess for me it's all of those things. Depends who you are. I mean, I don't know, I think of myself as someone who a lot of people haven't joined the dots around.
In a sense.
So there are people that know me through some of the earlier films that I did, some of whom think I'm Afghan.
From the guy right here.
That's what happens to me in Egypt a lot. People will come up to me and speak to me in English thinking that I'm Afghan.
Really? That's interesting.
There'll be people that know me from the square
Sure.
and from my time in Egypt.
Yeah.
And there are people that know me from now The Crown.
Right. But how are you connecting all the dots?
I mean, I live as me, right? I live in me in this world that we're in right now.
You didn't want to become an actor though, right? Like there was a teacher that basically chose you or pushed you in that direction. I mean, you didn't, it wasn't really your choice.
No, I was
at first.
16. I was about 15, 16, and there was a teacher who came up to me at school and said, like, I think you'll be great in this play that I'm doing. Come and audition. And I said, you're crazy. Like, I haven't done anything since I was like 6 in a nativity play or something. But from the very first rehearsal, I was hooked. I didn't think of myself at that moment as an Arab actor. I thought of myself as an actor.
How are you
I graduated in 2003
Iraq War
as an Arab actor. I was 7 when the first Intifada broke out. My children are now 7, 6 and 7. So, you know, point is I've grown up with this world. And to be an Arab actor in this world creates a whole other series of considerations and questions that you have to answer. Will you confront them and will you not? And also, you know, very clearly in terms of how you're looked at.
One last thing before we go inside. When I asked you in the beginning.
When you asked me, you said I'd be able to answer these questions quickly
so
and I don't do quick.
We're getting towards the end of the road. No, about...
I try, I promise I try.
We'll make it. Listen,
Yeah.
It's a challenge for both of us.
Yeah.
Basically, when I was asking about how you're looking at The Crown in retrospect, you were saying it's still early. But we've already established that it's, you know, it's a popular show, but why is it early for you to look at your place outside in terms of what you deliver?
Well, I feel people are only just seeing it, you know, they've only just seen it. I mean, it's, you know, I mean, my episodes came out, what, like,
in the last few weeks,
less than 2 months ago,
yeah.
You know, and I think the thing with, like a lot of people have watched it, clearly, and I'm getting that from, you know, just walking down the street and being recognized.
Yeah.
A hell of a lot more.
How is that? That's what I want to capture.
You know what? It's lovely.
Yeah.
Because the spirit with which people come to me is one in which I feel that they've been deeply touched. by what they've seen in the episodes.
Is it people from all backgrounds?
People from all backgrounds. You know, I mean, I think of the death of Dodi and Diana as an international cultural trauma. A lot of people felt it. A lot of people wept about it. A lot of people still feel it deeply in them, and rightly so. And that comes to, you know, one of the big things in all of this, which is to do with Dodi,
Right.
is that this is the first time in 26 years that he has been mourned.
Yeah.
Right?
He was
And
always a background character, wasn't he?
He's been like on supermarket shelves in the background. There are people who come up to me still and ask if he's alive, right?
Wow.
And that tells you how absent his story has been from those 26 years. I am constantly in my career and in my work, I am dancing the lines of representation and fighting the corner and the battle for better representation of people of Arab culture. And it says a lot that even someone in my position in my career had not until this moment asked myself the question, how many characters are there of an Arab background in film who you get to know and love, not fear, and so when they die mourn them? In the context of my lifetime, I'm 43 right now. The number of wars there have been, the number of Arab bodies that have been killed and that I have been watching my entire lifetime since I was a child, seeing being killed in war after war after war after war. And yet that relationship with audiences doesn't exist. It exists in documentary a bit.
Not in drama.
It exists in news, but again, it's just a totally different thing. In terms of what you get to know of the character, what you get to see of them, and also the scale of the audiences that you reach.
Well, look, there's definitely so much more to unpack. I mean, we've touched on so many different subjects that we're going to go into inside.
Quickly, right?
Quickly. Very quick. It was very quick. But yeah, like these guys, I think, I feel bad for them. I think they're about to get a bit too cold now. So we're just going to go inside if that's cool, and just continue the conversation.
Let's do that.
I appreciate that, Sandy. Thank you so much.
You know, two instances, Khalid, that went viral were on the red carpet. So you attended a Netflix event in November, another one in December. The first one you had on your hand, Ceasefire Now. And then the second one you wrote, end the occupation, release the hostages, or return the hostages. And on the back of your hand you said, permanent ceasefire. Now, was there a difference in your approach to both messages? I mean, what was going through your mind when you basically took that step to write them down?
They come from my experience as an Arab body in this world. I would love to be a moment in which all I have to do is turn up and enjoy and celebrate the work that I've done. But I am a person of a background for whom thousands of people are being killed. And the demand, the central demand, is a call for a ceasefire. Can I be myself, be whole, walking out in front of those cameras without bringing that part of me there? Especially in the context of playing Dodi, who is being mourned for the first time in 26 years as a result of the work that we're doing. And my sense of how those two things are absolutely, they resonate together. The price of living in a way that feels unaligned with my core soul is too heavy. And in the context of thousands being killed and thousands of children being killed, if not now, when? there are ways in which discussions of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict can turn into a screaming match, which results in no one listening and actually people switching off. And I think we are at a moment in which we have to expand the space of solidarity, and in which we have to create the cultural space for conversations that have not been happening for decades to actually happen. Conversations that, because they've not been happening, have enabled us to be in this crisis that we're in now. And I see it as part of my role and our role, if we work in the realm of culture, right, to try and make that space. Yeah. Because it needs, as well as it being a private space, it needs to be a public space. And things being said in an Arab body have a different resonance to them being said in a non-Arab body. And they have a different resonance to them being said, in the case of this conflict, in a Jewish body. Which is why also I took a huge amount of encouragement and solidarity in finding my way by following Jewish activism, particularly in America, and particularly Jewish Voice for Peace, and If Not Now, in finding a space to articulate the kind of complex feelings that surround an atrocity taking place, as I believe it was, on October 7th, followed by what we're seeing now. The scale of this death. And the imperative to try and find a way to say something, do something, risk something.
Just on that note, you're saying risk something. I mean, obviously, as we've all seen, the gestures went incredibly viral on social media. They spread around the world. They were heralded as a bold and courageous step, right?
Which is absurd.
That's exactly what I'm trying to get
Which
to.
is completely absurd.
Is that because, is the bar that low when it comes to Palestinian solidarity that these gestures become labeled as such, in your view?
The charged territory of speaking out and speaking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the deep polarization that exists, is there because of the history of extraordinary violence and grief that exists on both sides. And that creates silences that I think are particularly sharp in a Western context, which above all bears an immense responsibility actually on both sides. When you get into the realms of kind of comparative grief, whose grief is more important or who you've already lost, whatever side you're on, you've lost. But particularly in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, how you can see both griefs in the context of what I believe is the core injustice here, the occupation. This program is called Real Talk.
It is, yeah.
Right? So I'm going to try.
But just going back to the labels, because you said it was absurd. that it was being labeled as such? The fact that it was a brave move, the fact that it was a bold move.
Well, I mean, you know, in the context of thousands of people being killed, of 1.9 million people being displaced, of 100 journalists being killed, of all these numbers, you know, it's an absurd thing that an actor sticking up his hands with some writing on it is brave. That says a lot about our world. You know, a lot of people have seen, or might have seen, the most horrific footage, or some of the kind of horrific footage, you know, the father with the bag, you know, with his child in it.
Right.
But actually you discover that there are whole other genres of footage that aren't the most sensational, but that are perhaps as devastating. You know, the child who's in hospital, waking up to a world in which their entire family has been obliterated. There are the thousands who have survived. Right?
Yeah.
For whom this is their future, for whom this is the beginning of their childhood experience. And sadly, they're not the first generation of this. You could go back 75 years and repeat it again and again, but you could also go back the 17 years of siege and the war, you know, the 4-5 wars that there have been up until now. And that's what's so hard about this. How do you hold that space? Because that's the only space in which you can hold on to your humanity, a shared humanity, in which there can be the beginning of a starting point for an actual conversation with someone who does not share your background or your specific grief. Because if you disavow someone's grief, there's no starting point, right? And yeah, I think one of the things that I found very difficult about this right at the beginning, the very beginning, was I have been brought up with a proportionality that says it has to be like this, right? That if this number die on this side, that number are going to die on this side. And I don't know if the place for this is for this interview, but as I've said, I don't know what the point of hiding anymore is. I really don't. And, I think people of our background, broadly speaking, got caught in a vortex, and we're used to that vortex. We've grown up in that vortex of, how to speak and actually be heard or understood or felt, or not be branded a terrorist, or not be branded an anti-semite, or not be branded whatever, all of these kinds of things. How do you find that space? It's extremely hard. So no, I think there are very good reasons for why it's hard to speak. We are dealing with two immense legacies that are, linked at some level.
Why did you say that it was the most full you felt in your career, those gestures?
Because I decided not to hide. Because I decided to stand the ground of my beliefs. Because it was a moment in which I brought the fullness of me in my work culturally as an actor and as a performer in a piece of work that I care about deeply. And that met with my cultural and political identity as an Arab in a world that somehow sees fit to justify this scale of killing of, frankly, just simply people who look like me. And I stood there to claim the ground of my solidarity and who I am. And it's hard. And the point is, it's hard. You have conversations with all sorts of people saying, is it a good idea, is it a bad idea? You know, you're going to be cancelled, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. Is it worth it? It's more important that you concentrate on your career because at some later point, then you'll be of value of us. You know, all of this kind of stuff. Right? But the fact of the matter is, as I see it, that unless you actually walk in as much as you can the world that you believe in, it may never come to pass.
You've seen people who've done similar gestures being criticized as, you know, doing performative solidarity. I don't know if you've seen that.
Well, and this is the thing, is that I think that there is actually a vast territory of solidarity that exists, but that is scared to articulate itself because many people don't have the grounding of the experience to be able to actually defend it and really talk about it fully, because it is thorny and it is complicated, right? But I happen to be someone who has this background. I also happen to be someone who has been to Palestine 3 times in the year 2000 and 2008 and 2014.
You've been to Gaza as well.
Right, I've been to Gaza, right? I have witnessed that apartheid. I have witnessed the wall. I've witnessed the building of the wall. I went through area A, B and C at the very end of Oslo and those checkpoints after checkpoints. I'm someone who has been in Hebron and seen the streets which are segregated, in which Israelis, you know, and settlers can be on one side and Palestinians on another, right? I have felt what it is to be interrogated for hours in order to enter or pass. So I speak with the experience and the authority of someone who's actually been there, which makes it all the more imperative to speak up when a moment like this comes.
I mean, look, we're still together. we're not ending here, but maybe we can kind of switch it up, have some tea.
Yeah, exactly. We'll try and release some, yeah.
Exactly. Let's do it. Right. Amazing. Thank you, Khalid.
Yeah.
Going back to your role in the crowd, you know, there's something I've been excited to speak to you about, and I don't think it's been spoken about enough. The Arabic dialogue. See? that's the reaction I wanted. Yeah. The Arabic, look, the Egyptian Arabic in the Fayed story is on point. It really is. Like it's
3 Egyptians here.
And there's Egyptians behind the cameras too.
Smiling. Yeah.
You know, and I think there's reason for that. Is because the dialogue is multi-layered. You're not coming on, you know, saying good morning and sabah al-khair and kayfa haluk. You know, it's an actual. There were parts where you and Salim Lowe were acting in Arabic, basically.
We built a team that was a great team to make sure that Peter's script, his English, because he obviously wrote in English, was the best possible translation of what we were doing in Arabic. as you know, we are used to bad cultural representations of us. We're used to, bad dialogue. Inside the Crown team, we built, there was Mohamed Hashem, who did absolutely amazing work as a broadly speaking cultural advisor, and we brought in al-Fayed,
the Egyptian screenwriter,
who is responsible for the quality of the dialogue. And then really between us then four, we built a process, and this obviously went for the other actors who were acting in Arabic, but we built a process that meant we kind of, with Peter's scripts, we then made them into what we felt was right. We have this amazing kind of WhatsApp group, like back and forwards and laughter and like, oh my God, are we actually going to be able to say this on the Crown? And it was also just one of those basic things for all of us where there's this opportunity, like when does our culture get these kinds of resources?
It's very unique.
These kinds of resources thrown at us. And so we've got to get it right, right? We've got to get it right. And it was a pleasure, because here's the thing, right? You cannot act well with a good translation. You can act well with good dialogue. And if they get stilted dialogue, it's impossible for the actor to do what they can do. And that ends up, again, reinforcing bad representation and sometimes just boring scenes, And boring scenes means less of us on screen. Right? It's this kind of like catch-22 situation.
Boring scenes,
right?
Means less of
Bad
us
dialogue
on
results in boring scenes, results of less of us on screen, results of all of it, right? You need that sparky, amazing dialogue for us to have fun as actors, in order for us to be able to deliver something that even if you don't understand the words themselves and reading the subtitles, you're like, oh, that feels amazing.
When we were speaking earlier, you mentioned the word alignment.
I did.
And it's making me curious. I mean, what is Khalid Abdalla looking for? Is he looking for alignment? What is that word? When you use that word, when you invoke it, what do you mean by it? Is that something that you're on the lookout for?
There's a number of ways of saying that. One, I think we live in a crisis-driven world. Right? We live in a world that is fucked, right? On a variety of different parameters. And in order to live in that world, you have to somehow live by its terms, right? And its terms feed the way, the crisis that we're living, right? I, as I was saying to you earlier, lived a world in 2011 in which I saw millions of people who felt that the future in front of them was completely dark suddenly realign themselves to go, oh my God, this is possible, right? And live that revolutionary moment, albeit briefly, albeit in a way that has gone far darker right now. But when you live a moment like that, when you suddenly experience yourself realigned, able to live, able to work, able to do things that you had told yourself were impossible, and that the entire world and your entire country, your entire people had told you it was impossible, and actually it's now happening. When that world then closes off again, as it did, right? You realise very starkly the difference between what it is to live in alignment and what it is to live outside of that. but you live with this allegiance to trying to find and search that out. Always. And so I am constantly searching for how to align myself.
When, if young actors come to you who share the same background, whether they're Arab or Muslim or of color, and say that, you know, they want to enter this industry, they want to become actors, they want to follow into your footsteps, and they have certain causes or certain fears that they would have to forego, causes or things that they believe in order to be able to succeed within the industry. I mean, what kind of advice would you give? Do you give?
I am deeper into my career, but I still feel like I'm at the beginning, strangely. I feel the most important piece of advice I have is to stay true to yourself. Because that's what's really hard to do. I think there are all sorts of ways in which you can feel a pressure, as I said, to be palatable, right? To switch part of you off in order to accept this role or to do this thing or to say these words because I'm doing it for the next thing or whatever it is. There's a big difference between compromising, negotiating, and switching yourself off. Do not switch yourself off. And then the last piece of advice is always to follow yourself. You know, don't follow me. I'm not, you know, I don't feel like I'm in a position to give advice, but that's what I would say, right? If you feel it, you're right. You know?
And on that note, I mean, sadly our conversation is coming to an end, but I want to thank you for taking the rest of the time to really delve into all these different topics that we did.
I want to thank you for managing and really holding a space that is very sensitive, and I don't just mean that personally. I mean for all of us. There aren't many spaces, whether it's online or on film or in media, where the difficulty of these conversations are held sensitively. And I want to thank you for doing so.
Thank you, Khalid.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.